Russia says Ukraine shot this plane down. Ukraine hasn't denied those accusations. What do you think has happened here from what we know at this point?
Well, first, Katrina, thank you for having me. I think it's very important to bear in mind what your correspondent, Steve Rosenberg, said. This war was initiated by Russia and not by Ukraine. Russia has, on repeated occasions, struck civilian targets inside Ukraine. And so it's a little rich, I think, for Moscow to accuse Kiev now of having deliberately shot down an aircraft that contains about 60 plus Ukrainian POWs who were due to be exchanged. Just simple logic suggests the Ukrainians would not shoot down a plane carrying their own people.
President Zelensky is calling for an international investigation to get to the bottom of what did happen. Is that something that you'd like to see happen?
Well, I think that's definitely a good thing. The Ukrainians have been very careful about commenting on this. As far as I know, unless there's some breaking news that you're aware of, they haven't said anything yet. They're trying to investigate this. But at the background of this, again, as Mr. Rosenberg mentioned, is that there has been a lot of shelling from across the border, Russian shelling to Kharkiv, and Ukrainian retaliatory strikes in the Belgorod region. I have no evidence to show whether this is correct or not, but it is possible that this was an accident where the Ukrainians misidentified an aircraft and took it down. I certainly exclude the possibility that they would shoot down an aircraft containing their own people.
If this is a tragic accident, as you say there, given the shortages that Ukraine is facing in terms of ammunition, in terms of personnel, what does it mean for their war effort? Is it damaging to them?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think what's damaging to them at the moment is the uncertainty of the $60 billion thereabouts that President Biden has asked the Congress to provide. And as you know, our Congress is tangled up in this and hasn't reached a decision. But without that support, Ukraine's continuing war effort will be put in a very difficult situation. It will be very hard for them to continue. So I think that is the critical thing for them. This episode, as tragic and regrettable as it is, I don't think it's going to have a significant material effect on the war.
Now, Ukraine says there are 8,000 or more Ukrainians held prisoner in Russia at the moment, civilians and members of the military. And it also says there are tens of thousands of others missing, which Ukraine again holds Russia responsible for. Given that this plane was on its way to a prisoner swap, will there be any impact on future prisoner swaps, do you think?
That's a very good question. I'm inclined to say not, because the Ukrainians have Russian prisoners and the Russians have Ukrainian prisoners, and there is an incentive, therefore, periodically to do swaps. So I don't think this particular incident will complicate that.
Russia is saying, though, Ukraine should have known this plane had prisoners on it, and Ukraine is saying Russia should have told it it had prisoners on it. I mean, obviously things are very tense between the two nations, but how do they move on from this point?
Well, Katrina, first of all, in the middle of a war, when there's a lot of firing going back and forth and there are lots of objects in the sky, it is very, very easy to make mistakes. So for the Russians to say, well, the Ukrainians should have known that this was a plane carrying Ukrainian prisoners of war is all well and good. In reality, in the middle of a war, it's very difficult to do this. It's quite clear that the Russians will make as much hay of this as possible, and I think their line is going to continue to be that this was a deliberate Ukraine shoot down. I don't think that's the case, but an investigation into the facts, I think, is something that Ukraine probably will welcome, and it's a good idea to have that.
Okay, we'll leave it there for the moment. Rajan Menon of Defence Priorities, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.